Hi guys, Simon here again, and today I'm here to do another video about the interview process for becoming a CIR. But before I get into all of that, I just want to give you guys a bit of an update as to where I am. And also, yes, I know I'm wearing Gin Bear. I don't normally do this. This is just my sort of Saturday lazing around kind of clothing. Um, but leaving all that aside, so yeah, a lot's happened in the past couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I just haven't had any time to update at all. You may notice that the video quality is slightly better than it was previously. I've got a new laptop with an HD webcam, so rather than seeing me in standard definition glory, you get to see me in high definition glory. Um, but leaving all that aside, so I have of specific placement details now. I actually received those about 4 weeks ago, but I'm not actually going to tell you guys all of my details because I want to maintain some sort of level of privacy. Um, but I've been in contact with my predecessor. He's a really cool guy. He really loves the job. And he's really given me a lot of good information, so that's been good. I think we've sent about 30 emails backwards and forwards, so I really have a good idea of what's going to be happening. So I'm feeling a lot more confident about it than I was previously. A couple of weeks ago, I had the orientation at the consulate, and that went really, really well. It was really good to go there and to see everyone else who's going. Apparently, around 18 people are going this year, and some of them are also bringing family members, so there's a few more people going. And it actually turned out there were a lot of people going that I knew. One of the side effects of Perth being such a small city is that the Japanese language community, I guess, is quite small. So, I've already made a few friends, got a bit of a group going, so that's all really good. The orientation itself, I mean, there was some good info. Some of it dragged on a little bit, as you can sort of expect from, any time sort of Japanese people have to do speeches, it always tends to drag on a bit. And then last Thursday, I actually had a sort of farewell reception at the consulate, the Japanese consulate's residence. That was really good as well. I had to suit up, wearing my recruit suit, looking all fancy. And I got to do a lot of networking, got to speak to a lot of people, including someone who's, part of the office I'm working in. They've actually got an office sort of in Perth as well. So it turns out that he's kind of my colleague, even though he's going to be working in Perth and I'm going to be working in Hyogo. So it's all really been happening. I've got 2 weeks until departure. As of today, 27th of July is when we all depart. So I'm getting all excited. Everyone else is really excited. And to be honest, I'm just ready for this thing to go, for it to happen. So leaving all that aside, as I said to you, I am going to be talking about the preparation for the interview. And I do think that the preparation for the interview is one of the hardest things to prepare for because it really does differ from city to city. And one of the major things I did was actually go on the internet and find previous questions that other people had been asked that they'd actually put up on the net. And I actually provided these to my tutor, who sort of went over some of them with me. And I also practiced writing out answers to those questions as well. So they just gave me a really good idea as to the kind of themes. I mean, obviously the questions are always going to be slightly different, but at least the kind of themes that will be gone over, that are covered in the interview. So what I'm going to do is, as I did with the essay, I'm going to provide a link to a big list of questions that I actually found. So I'm going to put all those below the video, just so you guys have something to start with. And I've actually broken those down into CIR questions and ALT questions, but I think that some of them sort of work for both. So just have a look through some of those, and hopefully that'll help you guys to just sort of prepare. But I also spent a lot of time just thinking about the interview, mentally preparing. As you may or may not know, for the CIR interview, it does involve a reading segment where you've got to read a short article or two short articles. One's normally slightly easier than the other, and then you've got to answer questions about those. And so I actually spent a lot of time reading articles aloud to myself and reading the news and that kind of thing. And I also thought a lot about my disability in my role as a CIR and how I could turn my disability into a really positive thing during the interview that would actually assist me. in becoming a CIR. On top of that, I'd also in the past read Japanese interview preparation material, so I sort of went back over what I knew, and I also practiced my Keigo as well. Although my Keigo isn't great, Keigo is business Japanese, so like the ultra high, polite business Japanese. My Keigo isn't great, so I decided that it would be better to focus on Teinego, which is mas form, mas and des form, and if necessary, I sort of added in a little bit of Keigo here and there just to sort of fancy it up a little bit. And on top of that, I do want to add as well, because there's a lot of discussion online as to clothing for the interview, and I really don't think there's any argument. There's no room for argument over this. You have to be wearing a suit. Now, in my case, I actually had a recruit suit, which is a type of suit that Japanese people buy in Japan when they're doing job hunting. So I'd actually purchased one in Japan, a cool biz suit, which means that it breathes really well. So, especially because the interview was in February, which is summer in Australia, so it was a lot cooler than a normal heavy suit. And that cost me about $500. So if you are going to Japan before you apply for JET and before you take the interview, I really do recommend getting a recruit suit. You can just go into Aoki or one of the suit stores over there and just say, I need a recruit suit, and they'll sort it all out for you, tailor it for you, and make sure that you're looking all smart and everything. Okay, and so moving on to the actual interview process itself, I'd heard a lot of information, obviously, about the interview. I'd heard that for Perth, generally, the interview was entirely in Japanese, and for Australia in general, because the competition is so much higher. I'd heard that there were at least 2 articles that we had to read aloud and answer questions about, that one would be easier than the other. But it actually ended up being completely different for me. 75% of the interview ended up being in English as opposed to Japanese, which I was actually quite disappointed about, because I had spent a lot of time preparing in Japanese and I was really looking forward to using a lot more Japanese. Although, as I said at the time, slightly less pressure, I guess, but and there was also only one article, and it was actually quite easy. It was only around a JLPT 3 kind of a level, and there was only one word that I mispronounced, but I knew the meaning of. So, I managed to read the whole thing aloud clearly and answer a lot of questions really easily about it. It was about wind-powered electric plants or something, and basically alternate forms of energy. So it wasn't particularly hard, but again, I am a JLPT 1, and I spend a lot of time reading in Japanese. So it really depends how much time you actually spend reading in Japanese, I guess. In total, there were 4 people interviewing. I think I've sort of gone over some of this before, but 2 of them were from the embassy, and I actually knew both of them, sort of, as I said in my previous video. One of them was from the JET Alumni Association. Again, I knew him. And then another one was from one of the local universities. I think she was a Japanese professor or a Japanese lecturer. And I think I'd actually seen her before, and I'm sure she'd seen me, but we'd never actually spoken. So really from the start of the interview, I tried to do it as Japanese as I could, as a typical Japanese person. So, from the moment I walked in the door, shitsuei itashimasu, and I bowed, and, I did the whole sort of jikoshokai thing, at the end I added isshokenmei ganbarimasu node yoroshiku onegai itashimasu, which I think is like a really good sort of way, just adding that isshokenmei in there, I think really provides a good sort of impression, and I don't think they expect a lot of foreigners to use that phrase. That was actually something that I'd learnt from a Japanese interview preparation sort of video series, and it was actually aimed at Japanese people. Now, I tend to be really energetic and outgoing in interviews, sort of like I am in these videos. I don't tend to be quite this energetic in real life. I tend to be sort of more quiet. And I really think that they were testing me, because from the start, it was sort of a flat response. Like, I'd try and get them interested, try and get them sort of laughing or smiling a little bit. And basically, there was no reaction from the panel for most of the stuff that I said. So I really had no idea how I was going. One of the Japanese guy from the embassy would occasionally sort of nod his head, but the other guys were just like sort of, like not saying anything, just like flat stares. But I just didn't let it bother me because I knew that to an extent they were trying to just see how I'd react under pressure. So that wasn't too bad. Now, I didn't answer every question perfectly. I need to say that, I really didn't. There was a couple of questions I know that I sort of stuffed up. But overall, I think that when you look at my application, when you look at my letters of reference, when you look at my background, when you look at my experience living in Japan, my experience as a translator, my work experience in other fields, I think that everything really just came together. So obviously the interview is really important, but I think the fact that I didn't crack under pressure, that I really hammered the article itself and all that kind of thing, and that I sort of was using polite Japanese, I think that really helped me a lot. And something I also want to add, because this has sort of been a more general video, obviously there's not a lot you can talk about in terms of disability for this kind of thing. I did go out of my way, because they didn't actually ask me about my disability during the interview at all, which sort of worried me a little bit. And at the end they said, look, have you got any questions for us? And I sort of didn't, which in retrospect was kind of a bad idea. I knew that they would ask that question, but I just couldn't think. I think I had one question, but then I said, do you mind if I actually speak to you about my disability? And I actually came out and I said, look, I'm not sure if you guys aren't allowed to ask me about my disability, or if you just don't think it's relevant, but I would really like to talk about it. So I actually just spent like maybe 2 or 3 minutes just saying how my disability had been accepted in Japan when I lived there before, and how that it actually provided some benefits for me in a way, because it doesn't make me come off as like this big scary foreigner kind of thing that a lot of foreigners sort of have, and obviously they don't do it on purpose, but it does sort of make me more approachable in a way, because it's like, I guess, it makes me less scary, and when Japanese people do see me or do hear me speaking in Japanese, they realise pretty quickly, hey, if this guy, even though he's got a disability, he's speaking a really high level of Japanese, obviously, upstairs he's okay, it's just his legs and his hands that are a little bit not so good. So that was what I did at the end. And I also made sure at the end of the interview that I thanked them, and I said, it was an honour to be selected for the interview, and how I sort of enjoyed the interview, which I had, to be honest. It's always good to be able to sort of demonstrate your skills and demonstrate what kind of a person you are. So that was really what I did, and that was sort of the whole process of the interview, and sort of where I am up to now. So as I said, I've provided that link below for the questions, so I really do hope you guys will find that useful. I'm going to try and update again as soon as I can. I don't know if I'll have time to do it before I go to Japan, because I only do have 2 weeks. But if not, I will see you guys when I get to Japan with another video, hopefully with a bit of an update as to what's been going on again, and for the next segment, which is really sort of the waiting game. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again.